Welcome to the GSD with Jenny podcast, where we talk about how to overcome all the stuff that gets in the way of getting shit done. Imposter syndrome, fear, money, relationships, networking, building businesses. We're going to talk to experts, or as I say, mavens, that provide practical and tactical advice on how to GSD. I'm your host, Jenny Buchholz, founder and CEO of Haven Creative. Now, I started my business with $300 in a laptop and grew it to a team of Haven mavens serving clients around the world and generating over 7 figures in revenue. We were named one of the fastest growing companies in Charlotte and 2024 Crowns of Enterprise Woman-Owned Business of the Year, and I'm incredibly proud of the success we've had and to be among the 1% of woman-owned advertising agencies in the country. But I still need help too. So I started this podcast with the intent to dive deeper into the things that hold us back from achieving our goals. So thank you for joining me on this journey to GSD. Let's get started. Today on the GSD with Jenny podcast, Joanna Agosta Shere is joining us to talk about her leadership journey in the automotive restoration manufacturing space. Joanna is the president and CEO of Steel Rubber Products, which produces restoration parts for classic cars, RVs, and boats. She joined the company in 2005 and worked her way up the ranks to become CEO in 2020. It's no doubt that she is a GSD leader, and I can't wait to dive into her story and talk about lessons learned. Let's get started. Welcome, Joanna.
Hello, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I am excited to dive into your story. You became a CEO at the height of COVID, so I really want to know more about that journey, what lessons learned and what led you to that role, and kind of how that year went for you.
Sure. So I am the CEO of my family business, and my father was smart and retired at the end of 2019, of course. And when 2.5 months into my tenure, COVID hits, we're looking at, well, the governor shut us down. What kind of cash flow do I have to pay salaries? How long is that going on? I was very fortunate at the time to be part of a CEO group that I essentially took the seat that my father had. It's a group of CEOs that talk about different business issues. It's a group called Vistage.
Oh, yep. Familiar.
Okay, great. Yeah, we would get together about once a week on Zoom. And what I realized is no one knew what the hell they were doing. So
That was very true.
it was very good to realize that the green CEO and the very veteran ones, no one knew what was going on. So I didn't feel like I was completely the fish out of water. Everyone was. But we would meet once a week and we would talk about what were we doing? What are the things to consider that they were considering with their business? And I'm a manufacturing firm. So one of the things we decided once we realized that the governor was going to allow us to define if we were essential or not, is we decided we were essential. So I was able to keep business rolling. Funny enough, we had been testing a system that entire winter before 2020 happened on our customer service being able to take phone calls from home for inclement weather.
Oh, the timing.
So the timing was perfect. We were able to switch on work from home immediately. So that was very fortunate.
So what lessons learned during that time do you still apply today?
So I think, one of the things that was a big lesson for me is when there is uncertainty and you are the leader of an organization, people are looking to you. And they are nervous. Every question is going to happen. Will I still have a job? Will I still get paid? What's going to happen to us as an organization? And you don't have the luxury of flipping out. You need to be that calm voice, because if you are confident, then they will feel confident in a very crazy time. And so that was very important for me to be visible and communicate regularly with staff. I think you almost need to up the communication, even if the answer is, I don't know. And so just having a voice that people felt like could relieve some of the fears was huge. And I think that that is something that, frankly, I think women are really good at in some ways.
Leading with heart. Yeah.
It's leading with heart. And I'm not, but I know a lot of people are parents. They've had to do that with their own children. And it's so important. You've got a group of people looking to you to lead, and during this very stressful time when no one knows what's going on. And so that's what we did. And we told them, look, things could change on a daily basis, but what we do know is that we're going to keep working and rolling until we can. And we were able to maintain business throughout that entire period.
It's kind of funny what you're talking about now is maybe applicable to what was then in 2020. We have no idea what's happening. The market's changing.
The market's changing. I mean, it's so funny. We have a new U.S. House of Representative who actually also runs a business, and he said, right now, I wouldn't make huge changes. Just settle tight until we understand what's going on a little bit before you go and you make a whole bunch of capex expenses and things like that. So that's a lawmaker who's telling me he doesn't know what's going on for his own business at the moment.
That's good advice. I was going to ask you, what kind of things are you thinking and seeing changes with in the manufacturing space? Maybe that pause, that to not make big changes at the moment.
Well, there's some equipment that I still think like it's a good time to do is investments if you can. I mean, I just bought a piece of equipment that should pay off in 3.5 years. Something like that. Go ahead and do. I'm not sure I would go and move into a new plant. Those are the kind of things when you're talking about facilities and big changes right now. If in the interest rate, of course, when you're trying to buy large pieces of very expensive equipment, everyone's still kind of not sure what's going on there. So, yeah.
I'm going to go back to what you said as a CEO and realizing that communication is key and you can't over communicate. I definitely align with that principle. I often say, all problems start with a communication. It's something either not said or misunderstood. But you stepping into that role as a CEO, was this something that came natural to you? Was your father that way? Did you get trained? I mean, tell me more about that.
So I'm not sure my father was naturally that way, funny enough. Now, I was a PR major in college.
So that makes sense.
So there was some of that emergency communication came from that. And then I later got my MBA and a master's in organizational change. So organizational change is, how to manage change. How the people side of it. And so I suppose my training in that really helped. And I inherited a team that I've been working with already for a while, and they were incredible. They made it a lot easier for me to lead during that point because they were all on board. They were supportive. That significantly helped during that time period. And it made us be able to trust one another. In fact, it kind of threw us into the lion's den together with this new dynamic of me managing people that were my peers, it within just 2.5 months to say, okay, we're collaborating, we're working together to get us through this. And I think it really bonded us.
Let's talk about that for a minute. So I've talked to different leaders who, like you just mentioned, they were peers and then became the manager. How can people be successful taking that leap?
Well, and I probably was in a different situation than some people, knowing that it's a family business.
Right.
It was something that people had been aware of for a long time.
Yeah.
But working with them as a peer, knowing that we will eventually have a little bit different dynamic and making sure we're good going into that helped a lot. I have good, close relationships with all my senior leaders. And so when that transition happened, it wasn't a surprise. It wasn't like, and we're announcing the new CEO and it's this random person. So that helped because everyone knew it.
Yeah.
One of the peers at the time, I could tell it was going to be an issue with, and they opted out, and that's okay. Before I got to that point, everyone otherwise has been fabulous to work with. And we knew that going in. Now, it is a little bit different leading versus being, as I said, being a peer. But overall, we have a very collaborative environment. I really try to allow my managers to have wings to do what they need to do in their department, as long as we get where we want to get in the end.
Yeah. Well, so then I wonder for you, since you said it was unique, your people already knew you're related to the business. What kind of challenges did that pose maybe in its own way?
Well, I think so. The biggest challenge was that my father had ran the business for a good 30 years.
Oh.
Now, it's that second to third generation, not first to second. So there's a little easier transition in some ways, because when you're the founder, then trying to transition it to the next leader is much more difficult to kind of give up that baby. My dad had been through that with my grandfather, so he
Wow.
was like, I'm not, I'm going to give you space to do it. And he has really
You
done
knew
a
what
good
it was
job of
like because
that.
you went through it, is what you're
He
saying, right?
did, yeah.
That's awesome.
But as far as the challenges in regards to that was that people weren't sure how I would be. They were used to this leader for a long time, 30 years of a particular leadership style. Even though they knew me and were working with me, they didn't know if it would change things. In fact, I had some employees come up to me later and they said, when you became president, I wasn't too sure about you, but you turned out all right.
Oh, thanks.
Thanks. It's a glowing review right there.
Yeah.
But it did, it's change, and any kind of change, especially when you're with someone for a long time, you just don't know how it'll be. So
Absolutely. I want to dive into that a little bit more too, because everything we do when it comes to branding and communications is essentially a change for an organization.
Mhm.
And I know that I could get better at this. So what principles of change management should I be aware of, or anyone be aware of, or the steps that to make it successful as possible?
Ugh, so as I said, I had that as a master's,
Yes.
right? So you go to classes, they give you formal steps and everything, and then real life happens, and you might as well just kind of throw them out the window because you're dealing with people,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
And there will be people that fight change just because it's change, not because it's not be, just lose logic on if it's better or not. And then there'll be other people that are ready to jump in the deep end long before you've even rolled out what the change is.
Yep.
So you're going to have people come at it at different speeds. And the biggest thing is if it's a change that they can be part of, even better. So if it's a change
Yeah.
that your employees can have a say, be empowered to be part of that change, even better, because there's buy-in. Now, that's not always the way it happens in an organization. Sometimes
Hmm.
change is thrust upon people and new managers, that they didn't have a say in or whatever happens. And I always feel like communication and that feedback loop is huge, outbound as well as listening. And if it's something that someone's upset about that is just this is just the way it is now, you have to show that you're listening in regards to that. And sometimes the difficult thing is you're going to have people that are not willing to go along with the change, and they'll have to make that decision if they're right for the culture. A lot of companies go through big, right? It's big, it's been big, trying to have the right culture, a
Yep.
company you want to work for. And sometimes you're in flux of what that culture is, the culture you are, the culture you aspire to be, and then you're somewhere
Yeah.
in the middle there. And it's kind of painful every now and then in that middle section. And you'll lose some people along the way, probably so. But if you all believe in that, and then you hire going forward to that culture, that significantly helps, I think.
Absolutely. So, how would you define your role as a CEO? I've heard some people say they were the chief energy officer. Like, what do you feel like your primary function is as CEO?
I this organization's in its third generation, and I really want to steer us into having a successful future. I don't know that I'm the energy person, I will say that, but I do want to guide us in a vision to where we want to be and be successful. I like that we are not only a family business, but we treat our employees like family. It's a manufacturing plant, but it's not one of those places that you have to get your task done in 90 seconds and then move on to the next one. We do take time for a little bit of fun. Um, we when the eclipse happened last year, was it
Yeah,
last year, year before?
a couple years ago. Yeah.
We took everybody off the job for about an hour to watch the eclipse. We gave them glasses. We served them moon pies and sun kissed, and we just had a little bit of fun. This isn't an organization that is going to. It's not a West Coast high tech make a ton of money organization. This is a steady, have fun. We're in a fun industry. We're in the classic car restoration market. You're spending 8 hours of your day with us. We want to do good work, but we recognize that this is a lot of your time, and we want to make it as good as possible. We want to make money. Obviously, we need to pay the bills and we need to pay the salaries and the light bulbs, but it's not a get rich quick industry. It's not Silicon Valley. And so the culture we have here is a family culture. And I think that's why we've had employees for 50 some years. I've got a 50-year employee here.
Wow. I mean, that really does speak to how you take care of your people to have
Yes.
that longevity.
So, I don't think I'm maternal in that in that
Family
CEO
dynamic? Yeah.
style, but it's more of a, I do keep up with somebody whose mother's in the hospital. I do keep up with, you just had a newborn baby. How are you doing? That kind of thing. Because I think that family feel has gone a long way. And I think our customers appreciate that as well. And
Absolutely.
so that's kind of our, I guess, how I lead. But I still like to think strategic. I still like to have a vision. And my strength is probably more on the operations end.
Okay.
I work with my brother. His strength is more on the marketing sales end, and we kind of complement each other very well in that aspect. So I'm not warm and fuzzy, but I'm not mean and
Yeah.
with the whip, get things done.
No, I love that. I think that people talk about company culture and it seems to be this warm and fuzzy ball of joy where all we do is have ping pong tables, drink beer at 5 and have our dog to work. And I think that's the opposite of what we're trying to do. We want to have cultures that perform. Like you said, we've got to make
Right.
money at the end of the day. It has to make sense for the
Right.
organization. Sometimes there's a disconnect when people throw that word culture around and not really understanding that it also has to be a high performing team, essentially.
Right.
But I love that you talk about having fun. I think that's a key component. And you talked earlier about driving collaboration, and it sounds like you're not a micromanager, which is
No.
also key in a strong organization. How do you go about driving collaboration? Do you have like set meeting times to collaborate? Like, what does that look like?
So we do. We have some set meeting times to collaborate. I have not. We have two levels of managers. We've got, of course, a senior team, and then we have a group of middle managers, and we get together and talk about different strategic issues. One of which is culture,
Mm,
making sure we are doing a good job having a consistent message to the organization. And so we do meet regularly. We meet every Monday just to make sure everyone's got everything they need for the rest of the week too. Just a really short, where are you? What do you need help with? You know, so and so's out in this department. Can I borrow this person to help ship packages or whatever? So everyone kind of helps each other out uh, in regards to that. One of the things I did when I first became CEO is I took my senior leadership team to Top Golf to bond because I felt like we needed an opportunity to kind of get to know each other so we could hop in. And being a small organization, that makes it easier.
yeah.
But working with the team, and no, I'm not a micromanager. I don't want to stand over people's shoulders because I think that creates fear and distrust. Now, that being said, we do have accountability in our meetings and say, okay, where are we on this project? Where are we on this project? Because we need to still move the needle forward. But it's done as where can we help? What can we help with? And as far as trying to think of the right way to word this in collaboration. I know the buck stops with me in a decision, but we will talk about certain bigger decisions as a team so that if I'm not giving something consideration that I should be before I make a decision, at least everyone's kind of been heard about it.
That's great. I mean, that is how I've seen on the outside looking in, the best organizations really do thrive and push through downturns and are able to pivot and find new strategies because they are collaborative in that way.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, if I always say this, like if I wanted to hear myself talk, I wouldn't hire employees. Like I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. Bring me your
No.
ideas.
No, I need not only those ideas, but I'm not going to be a specialist on everything. I need
Yes.
other folks that know it, that bring it, that or that's your passion. Great, you do that. Then.
I recently attended a session that talked about disruption and how we try to set our teams up and create a structure around seeing the future and trying to
Hmm.
predict the future and like basically breaking down nodes of disruption to understand where the market is going. And
Hmm.
so this caused me to lean into how do we practice innovation in the organization? And I'm curious from a manufacturing standpoint, how do you attack the change in the market and stay innovative?
So I so one of the things I had gone to a session on that as well, and they said one of the things they recommend is putting all your team together and ask them, how do you break your business? What would make your business go under?
Wow. How do you
If
break
you if
your
you
business?
if you had to do something that would, what are the different ways you can break your business? And then you can see where your weaknesses are,
Love
where
that.
you're not nimble. And it's interesting in manufacturing. In some ways we are nimble, in some ways we're limited to what we have the machinery for. But being small organization really gives us the opportunity to change lanes if necessary. I mean, if, for those that know their history, when during World War II, a lot of the car makers went to making military products because
Mhm.
they were able to change. During COVID, a lot of distilleries started making disinfectants.
Yep.
There's a potential in 2030 to have a real big economic downturn.
I've heard the
Some of the
same.
economists are expecting that in 2030, 2029, 2031. So we've been having these conversations on what is it that we can do. And the great thing is, yes, we make parts for classic cars right now, but we make things in rubber. So
We make
whatever that
things. Yep.
need is, we can pivot. We have our own tool room. I can make molds here on site. So that gives us a lot of advantages to switch things up if necessary on whatever the current need is. And so that's actually pretty exciting when it comes to innovation. It doesn't have to be for cars. It doesn't have to be for a particular market. In fact, 10 years ago, we decided to start making rubber products for RVs and recreational boating. We've been next to a campground since 1975. And every once in a while, a camper would come over looking for something for a seal for their RV. And it finally occurred to us, maybe we should make parts for RVs. It's practically the same looking thing.
Wow.
And it's been a successful market for us because we decided to say, hey, let's give it a shot.
So I'm going to go back to something I heard. The best leaders are flexible. And what you just said is the ability, the flexibility and the company being able to pivot when you need to in order to
Right.
grab that market share that no one's looking at is
Mhm.
how you can overcome these downturns and create a legacy. And it sounds like if you're the third generational owner, right? They must have had pivots over the time.
Oh, yeah.
Can you share a story from the before you became CEO of times that the company had to pivot?
Well, the RV thing was one of those. We kept seeing at the time, we love our restoration guys. We love it, but at the time it was a little scary in that our customers were graying. We weren't completely sure what kind of longevity was in that market. Going through some research, we learned that not only do a lot of our parts also work on RVs, we used a Packard part for a Monaco RV, which we already had to seal up a compartment seal. But the popularity of RVs was huge at the time. And this was right before COVID. And, they were selling out of those crazy. And there's not really an aftermarket. There's not much of an aftermarket. It is you buy an RV, it's treated like it's disposable by the OEs. And then what do you do if you already have it? So we thought, you know what? This is something we can get into. This is an area that there's a gap. And there are some aftermarket folks out there, but not a ton of them, not like in the classic car industry. So then we're like, well, what else is out there? What else? Well, we live off Lake Norman here in Charlotte, and boating is huge with bump guards and other things. We're like, okay, again, it's what is it we already make, and then kind of go from there on what else could it be used on. So that was a pivot. We had an interesting pivot a good 10 years ago. Also, we had a key employee that was arrested for embezzling. That'll make you have to pivot your company real quick. Um,
Whoa.
you don't, first of all, your trust all of a sudden goes out the window. Secondly, what do you do when their responsibilities, they were pretty high up in responsibilities. When that happened and I didn't know about it in advance, I was told within that day, you are now managing this department and you will be flying to California in 2 weeks to ride up and down the coast for a TV shoot. And I'm like, it was just such a shock. And it it really forced us to kind of get back to basics. What is it we need to do? What policies were we missing that somehow allowed this to occur? What worked that we found it? That other stuff.
Mhm.
And then how do we manage the infrastructure
Mhm.
afterwards. It was a challenging time, but we made it through it.
Sometimes in the suck, in those challenging times, we create better processes, systems, and find the best people when we have to be gritty and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine you leaned in on your PR background for this, but my thought went right away to how do you rebuild the reputation with your clients and customers during an embezzlement story like that? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, and this guy was very well known. Fortunately, most of our customers are, we sell a lot of retail and they weren't aware of what had happened there. But, we had a great reputation, fortunately, as an organization. And I wasn't sure how much it was going to come out. I mean, that all of a sudden, you're right, that PR background came up. I'm like, if news media calls us,
Yeah.
we're going to limit who can talk to them. We're only going to talk about what's public, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
But fortunately, I I went the extreme route, and we didn't have to deal with it too badly. In fact, most people realized who they knew the company, they knew the other leaders of the organization, and they didn't doubt that we made the right decision, even if it was a surprise to them. So that was good.
That
But
makes sense.
that helped having that reputation already in advance.
That's what I was going to say, the legacy and the brand in place. And then the fact that you took action on it reinforces the trust and loyalty, I imagine, with your
Yes.
consumers. I often have speak to a term called head trash. I don't know if you've heard this one before, but where sometimes I'll say the bitch upstairs that says mean things to me about what I can't do today. Imposter syndrome, some people will call it.
Uh-huh.
I would like to know one piece of advice you have given yourself when that head trash comes up, maybe for others that have to overcome these feelings of inadequacy as a leader or that is jumping into a CEO seat for the first time. What would that be?
You got to that role somehow, right? And obviously you've been doing something right if you were put in that position. And yes, I remember when I was first CEO, and I'm like, I don't know if can I hack it? I mean, I've got a lot. I'll tell you what weighted on me a lot was all the people that I was responsible for making the right decision. Their livelihood depended on it. That is a weighty thing to have.
Yes.
But surround yourself with good people. Surround yourself with mentors. Surround yourself with good team. Surround yourself with confidants. I'm very fortunate. I have a very supportive husband who I can talk to about things. Remember, as I said, that you made it to that role because you're damn good at something. You're damn good at whatever you were doing prior to that, and people felt confident about putting you there. So no one puts you there if you're a dummy. And sometimes you just need the affirmation that you're making the right decisions. So that's what I would say: is surround yourself with good people. You can say, look, this is what I'm thinking. Am I crazy? No. Am I off kilter? What am I not considering?
I 100% believe in that too. It's the community that I have around me, the mentorship, and then going back into communicating, just talking about those things and working through them is huge. If you could go back and give, let's say, 25-year-old Joanna one piece of advice, what would that be?
Oh my goodness. Leave the carbs alone. No, don't eat the carbs. I think that 25, have confidence in yourself. You're smarter than you give yourself credit for. You really do. Go out and try it. Don't be scared.
Absolutely.
I think, and then the other thing is don't presume things. People have asked me what it's like working in the automotive industry and do I get a hard time from the men in it? And I'll be honest with you, this industry has been very welcoming to me. I'm currently the chair of the Automotive Restoration Market Organization. It's the restoration arm of SEMA. It's a council. We represent all the restoration companies in SEMA. I am the only woman in that council, and those guys voted me to be their leader. So I have never really felt unwelcome by the industry. And there are tons of people that are there to help you, men, women, anybody. And just charge forth. And if there are people that want to underestimate you, let them underestimate you. It's kind of fun sometimes to prove people wrong.
Absolutely. And I agree. I mean, I've been in the automotive space. Gosh, I started at Hot Rod TV in my 20s. And so 25 years later,
I agree. I've never really felt like an outsider, and I just stayed curious and
Hmm.
asked questions, and I was invited to the seat at the table just by being a team player
Right.
and being curious. So I love that you touched on that piece of it.
Hmm.
All right. So the one last thing I want to ask you is that, your bio says that you can sing karaoke sober. So what
Right.
is your go-to karaoke song? Because also I can't sing karaoke, period, let alone sober. And yeah, anyway.
Well, and right now my voice has got something going on in it. I don't know what the deal is here.
Mine is acid reflux, by the way.
Yours is acid.
Why
That's
my
something.
voice is so raspy. People are like, "What's that voice rasp that you have?" Yeah, it's just called acid reflux. So,
Mine's called allergies, I think.
so
No,
yeah,
it's karaoke song. I like doing "Wanted Dead or Alive" by Bon Jovi.
nice. All
Yeah.
right,
See, I
we're
don't
gonna have
even
to add
do
that.
the typical girl songs either. So
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a fun conversation.
yes, it has. Thank you for having me again. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to GSD with Jenny. If you found this episode helpful, share it with a friend. For more ways to GSD, you can also find me on LinkedIn at Jenny Buchholz, where you can sign up for my Maven Mindset newsletter, or follow me on Instagram at Maven Jenny. Until next time, go GSD, Mavens!